All right, diving in depth today, just for you,
Always exciting.
we're tackling Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. You mentioned being interested in the whole startup scene.
Right.
Yeah. And this book, it's practically legendary in Silicon Valley.
Oh, absolutely a must read.
So we're going to pull out the really essential stuff, the core ideas that can help make sense of Thiel's view on startups, and innovation in general.
It's almost like decoding the success of startups
Yeah.
and hopefully giving those listening some tools to use in their own ventures.
Exactly. Now, Thiel throws the 0 to 1 concept out there right away.
Yeah.
What's he even getting at with that?
Well, he's making a clear distinction between creating something totally new, like, picture the very first iPhone,
Right.
versus just copying what's already out there. Like all the similar smartphones that came after,
Right.
0 to 1, is all about that big leap, that radical innovation, not just making tiny improvements. He uses globalization to describe that copying part. Basically, taking something that exists and just spreading it around.
So it's kind of like the difference between inventing the wheel the first time and just making a slightly better wheel, right?
You got it. And for Thiel, the driving force behind 0 to 1 progress, that's technology.
Okay.
And he uses technology broadly here.
Yeah.
Not just computers, but any way of doing things that's new and better.
Okay.
He brings up historical examples like the invention of the printing press to show how tech has totally changed things up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, you'd think big companies with all their resources would be better at this 0 to 1 stuff, right?
You'd think so, but Thiel says not so fast. He thinks startups actually have an advantage.
Really?
Yeah. They're more nimble, less bogged down by all the bureaucracy,
Yeah.
more willing to take risks.
Yeah.
He even says that in some companies, just seeming busy becomes more important than actually getting things done.
Little wake-up call there, maybe.
Definitely.
Yeah, he doesn't sugarcoat things, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, this next part, I have to admit, threw me for a loop. Thiel actually thinks monopolies, or at least some of them, can be good things.
Okay.
But isn't competition supposed to be, always better?
Well, his argument's pretty interesting. He says that monopolies, when they come about because of real innovation, they can push progress forward. They create new things, new abundance, better products and services.
Oh.
Think back to that first iPhone. It was pricey, sure, but it was so much better than anything else at the time.
Yeah.
People were lining up to get it. That's the kind of creative monopoly Thiel's talking about.
So he's not defending those companies that just, squash the competition to take over, right?
No, not at all. It's about monopolies that happen because a company offers something truly superior, something 10x better, as he calls it.
Okay.
And he thinks these monopolies, they can actually benefit us, the consumers, in the long run. Because those profits, they get reinvested into more research, more development, which leads to even more innovation.
Right. So if our listeners out there thinking, should I be trying to build a monopoly? What's the real takeaway here?
It's less about aiming for a monopoly and more about grasping the power of creating something really unique and valuable. Thiel wants us to question that typical obsession with competition and instead pour our energy into making something so good it doesn't even have real rivals.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Think about it. In your field, where's the chance to build something 10x better?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, this next part, it gets a little Shakespearean, literally.
Oh.
Thiel compares business rivalries to, those classic tragedies where everyone ends up worse off in the end.
Oh, interesting.
He even comes up with this fictional play. He calls it Gates and Schmidt,
Okay.
based on Romeo and Juliet, of course.
Of course.
With Microsoft and Google as the feuding families, their intense rivalry, he argues, made them miss the big picture, and that let Apple just swoop in and dominate, the whole mobile phone market.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting idea. So how does this apply to, say, someone working on a startup?
It's a warning, right? Don't get so caught up in fighting with the existing players that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Right.
He uses mobile card readers as an example.
Okay.
After Square came out with their little square-shaped reader, everyone and their brother started copying it
Yeah, I remember that.
with just tiny differences. Thiel says this kind of copycat competition, it leads to stagnation. It's like a race to the bottom where everyone loses.
So avoid getting stuck in that imitation trap.
Exactly. Think about what you bring to the table that's unique, what makes you different. Don't be scared to carve your own path and make something truly distinct.
All right, solid advice. So for those listening who are like, okay, I'm on board with this 0 to 1 thing, but how do I actually make it happen? Thiel's got some pretty specific tips on that front.
Oh, yeah, he does.
He outlines these 4 key traits of companies that build lasting value: proprietary technology, network effects, economies of scale, and branding.
It's a good framework.
Yeah. Let's start with proprietary technology. I'm guessing this is all about patents and secret formulas, right?
It's definitely a part of it, but it's bigger than just legal protection. Thiel's talking about developing technology that's so advanced, so innovative, that it gives you real advantage over the competition. He calls it the 10x rule. Your tech needs to be at least 10 times better than the next best thing.
10x, wow.
Imagine like a cure for baldness or a way to, I don't know, safely get rid of the need for sleep. These are the game changers that create entire new markets, right?
Yeah, those would be game changers for sure.
Absolutely.
So how does someone figure out what's 10x better in their area? Is there like a formula for that?
He uses the example of the iPad.
Okay.
When it came out, it wasn't just a slightly better tablet, it was a whole new experience. It revolutionized how people use them.
Right.
So the trick is to find opportunities where you can create a similar jump in value,
Yeah.
not just a little improvement.
That's a tough challenge, but it definitely gives our listeners something to think about, right?
It does. It challenges us to think big, be bold, and push the boundaries.
Now, Thiel also takes on a word that's become kind of a buzzword in the startup world: disruption. He seems to have a bit of a complicated relationship with it.
Yeah, he acknowledges that disruption can be a powerful force, but he's critical of how the word has been, watered down and misused.
Yeah.
He thinks too many entrepreneurs are fixated on disrupting just for the sake of disrupting,
Yeah.
without actually creating anything truly valuable.
He uses Napster as an example, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. They definitely shook up the music industry,
Oh, yeah.
but they ultimately crashed and burned.
Yeah.
They were so focused on attacking the establishment that they forgot to build a sustainable business.
So Thiel's saying focus on creating something great, something that solves a real problem, not just disrupting things for the sake of it.
Exactly. Disruption can be a side effect of real innovation, but it shouldn't be the goal in itself.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Yeah.
So do you want to be known as someone who just shook things up, or someone who built something that lasts and has real value?
Good question.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about 0 to 1, creative monopolies, the dangers of just copying others, and the importance of having technology that's truly groundbreaking. And we even debunked the myth of disruption as the ultimate goal.
That's a lot to digest.
It is. So where do we go from here? What's next on our deep dive?
Well, Thiel says that for a startup to succeed, or any venture, really, you need a certain way of thinking, a way of looking at the future. He calls it definite optimism.
Definite optimism, okay. That sounds interesting. But let's pause here for a minute so our listener can really take all this in. We'll be right back to explore this idea of definite optimism and how it can help you build a better future.
All right, we're back, and we were talking about needing this mindset of definite optimism. It's not just about blindly believing things will get better.
Yeah, it seems like Thiel's drawing a line between that and what he calls indefinite optimism, which you hear a lot about, especially in Silicon Valley.
Right, exactly. In definite optimism, it's like thinking things will improve, but not having any real plan for how to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's all about luck and chance.
Yeah.
Instead of taking action, Thiel believes that to really move from 0 to 1, from nothing to something new, you need a clear vision and a concrete plan.
So it's like the difference between hoping you'll win the lottery and actually building a business.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Thiel argues that definite optimism leads to thinking long-term, focusing on creating something truly new, not just shuffling things around.
Right.
He actually outlines 4 different ways of looking at the future: indefinite pessimism, definite pessimism, indefinite optimism, and definite optimism.
Okay, break that down for me a bit. I'm getting a little lost in all the terms.
Think of it like a grid, all right? On one side, you've got definite versus indefinite, meaning, do you believe the future is predictable or unpredictable?
Okay.
And on the other side, you've got optimistic versus pessimistic, meaning, do you think the future will be better or worse?
All right, so indefinite pessimism would be like, I have no clue what's going to happen, but it's probably going to be bad.
Exactly. And definite pessimism would be like, I know exactly where things are headed, and it's not pretty.
Okay, got it. So where does definite optimism fit into all of this?
Definite optimism is believing that the future can be better, but only if we make it better. It's about having that clear vision and the plan to get there. Thiel believes this is essential for building great companies, for creating a better future.
And he contrasts that with indefinite optimism, which he sees as more common, in places like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's that idea that things will get better because of technology, but without a solid plan for how we'll actually get there.
Right. He even criticizes the way we approach drug discovery these days, which he says has become too reliant on just randomly testing tons of compounds,
Oh, interesting.
hoping for a lucky break.
Yeah.
He thinks we need to go back to a more focused, intentional way of doing research and development.
That's a pretty bold statement. But I can see how this idea of definite optimism, it applies to way more than just startups.
Oh, absolutely.
It's relevant for anyone trying to achieve something big, right?
It's about taking charge of your future,
Yeah.
actively shaping it, not just sitting back and waiting for things to happen. So think about your own goals, what you're striving for. Which of those 4 views of the future speaks to you the most? And how can you be more, definitely optimistic in your approach?
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something called the power law. Thiel dedicates a whole chapter to it and how it works in venture capital.
Yeah, the power law.
Yeah.
He argues that a small number of investments end up generating the majority of the returns.
Okay.
It's not like everything performs moderately well.
Right.
It's more like a few investments just skyrocket while most others fizzle out.
He uses his experience at Founders Fund to show this, right?
He does. Their investments in Facebook and Palantir, they completely overshadowed all their other investments put together. Thiel says this power law dynamic, it's happening in a lot of areas of life, but most of us just don't get it.
Why do you think that is? Why is the power law so hard to grasp?
Thiel thinks it's because we tend to focus on small differences instead of exponential growth. We get caught up comparing things that are pretty similar rather than seeing the potential for those outliers to completely change the game.
So, is the takeaway here that everyone should be trying to find the next Facebook?
It's not really about picking winners, but it's about understanding how the power law affects your decisions.
Okay.
Like, if you're thinking about career options,
Yeah.
would you rather have a big chunk of a small, fast-growing company or a tiny sliver of a huge corporation? The power law suggests that going for potential, even if it's risky, could lead to huge rewards.
So understanding this power law can help you make better choices, whether you're investing or starting your own thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's realizing that not all opportunities are equal.
Right.
Some have the potential to create way more value than others.
Now, this next concept is a bit more mysterious. Thiel talks about secrets and how they're tied to innovation. What exactly does he mean by secrets?
He's talking about valuable insights, truths that are hidden from most people, things that most people don't know or believe. He believes that really great companies are often built on these secrets, on the ability to see something that everyone else has missed.
So it's not about, like, keeping things confidential or having some secret formula?
Not necessarily. It's more about having a unique perspective,
Yeah.
a different way of looking at the world that lets you uncover those hidden truths.
Got it.
Talks about Andrew Wiles, who spent years working in secret on a proof for Fermat's last theorem.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't that considered one of the toughest math problems ever?
Exactly. And Wiles, he believed there was a solution, even when everyone else had given up.
Wow.
He spent years searching for it, working in secret to avoid distractions, and all the skepticism.
He eventually cracked it, right?
Yeah, he did. And Thiel uses this story to show how powerful it can be to believe in secrets,
Yeah.
to have the conviction to go after something that others think is impossible.
So how can our listener apply this idea of secrets to their life or their work?
Thiel encourages us to actively look for those secrets,
Okay.
challenge conventional wisdom, look for opportunities that everyone else has overlooked. He thinks there are tons of secrets out there, just waiting to be discovered.
He contrasts this with what happened to Hewlett-Packard, which he believes lost its way when it stopped believing in secrets and got too bogged down in bureaucracy and incremental improvements. They stopped asking the big questions and lost their edge.
Right, it's a reminder that being willing to challenge the status quo, to seek out new knowledge, that's essential for anyone who wants to stay ahead of the curve.
So it's about cultivating a mindset of curiosity and a willingness to explore the unknown.
Exactly. It's about believing there's more to learn, more to discover.
All right, so we've talked about the importance of definite optimism, this power law concept, and the role of secrets in innovation.
Yeah, lots of big ideas.
Now let's zoom in on the people side of building a company.
Okay.
This is where Thiel brings up the idea of founding matrimony, right?
Yeah. He says choosing the right co-founder is one of the most critical decisions an entrepreneur will ever make.
Okay.
He compares it to choosing a spouse,
So what should you be looking for in a co-founder?
Shared values, complementary skills, and being totally aligned on the company's vision and mission. That's key.
But it goes beyond just finding someone with the right skills, doesn't it?
Absolutely. He emphasizes shared history and deep trust.
Right.
He argues that the best co-founding relationships are where both people deeply understand each other's strengths and weaknesses
Yeah,
and are ready to work together through anything.
makes sense. Building a company is tough, and you need a special kind of partnership to navigate all that.
He even uses the marriage analogy to illustrate that need for commitment and resilience,
Hmm.
you know?
Okay, so let's say you found your perfect co-founder and you're ready to build your team. What advice does Thiel have for attracting and keeping the best people?
He thinks that clearly articulating the company's mission and values is essential for drawing in people who are like-minded.
Okay.
He uses PayPal as an example. The early team was all united by this shared passion for creating a new digital currency that could challenge the US dollar.
So it's not just about offering a good salary and benefits.
It's about finding people who are genuinely excited about what you're building,
Right.
who believe in your mission. He even compares successful startups to, get this, cults.
Wait, cults, isn't that a bit extreme?
He's being provocative, you know,
Okay.
but he's highlighting how important shared beliefs and a strong sense of purpose are.
Yeah.
He says the difference between a successful startup and a cult is that the startup is fanatically right about something important, while the cult is fanatically wrong about something important.
Okay, so it's about finding people who are not just talented, but also aligned with the company's core values.
Exactly. It's about building a team of people who are passionate about solving the same problem.
All right, let's switch gears again and talk about something that's often overlooked in the startup world, but it's absolutely crucial for success: distribution.
Ah, yes. Distribution Thiel challenges that whole idea of if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
He even brings up a funny example from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where salespeople are seen as useless and are banished to this remote planet.
So he's saying we tend to underestimate the importance of sales and distribution.
Exactly. We often see sales as something we have to do, not something that drives success.
Right.
But Thiel argues that distribution is essential for getting your product or service into the hands of customers.
Yeah, no matter how great it is.
Right. He points out that sales are often hidden in plain sight.
Okay.
A lot of people whose jobs are about distribution, they don't even have sales in their job titles. They might be called account executives, business development managers, even community managers. He even argues that politicians are basically salespeople pitching their ideas to voters.
I never thought about it that way before, but that makes sense.
And he makes another great point about sales. It's like acting, it works best when it's hidden.
Okay.
We don't want to feel like we're being sold to, right? So the best salespeople are the ones who can subtly influence us without making us feel pressured.
So how do you become one of those great hidden salespeople? Are there any tricks to effective distribution?
Thiel talks about the power law of distribution,
Okay.
saying that one or two effective channels are usually much more powerful than lots of mediocre ones.
So it's about finding the right channels for your product or service and focusing on those?
Exactly. He warns against trying to do a little bit of everything. Instead, he says focus on finding and mastering the single most effective way to reach your target audience.
He actually says that poor sales, not a bad product, are the most common reasons startups fail, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call.
It is. It shows that no matter how great your product is, if you can't get it to customers, it won't succeed.
Right. Spend time understanding your target audience, their needs, their habits. Figure out where they spend their time and find creative ways to reach them through those channels.
That's a great point. Don't underestimate the power of distribution.
Yeah,
It's not just about marketing. It's about building relationships, understanding your customers, and finding ways to connect with them.
absolutely.
Now, let's move on to another interesting topic: the relationship between humans and machines. Thiel addresses the growing fear of AI taking over jobs, but he offers a different perspective.
Right. Everyone's talking about AI these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's Thiel's take on the future of work in the age of AI?
He believes that computers and humans, they're fundamentally different.
Okay.
They're good at different things. We should see them as complements to our abilities, not competitors.
So it's not like one wins and the other loses.
Exactly. Thiel says that while computers are amazing at processing huge amounts of data,
Right.
humans are much better at making judgments and decisions in complex situations.
He uses examples like Deep Blue, the chess-playing computer that beat Garry Kasparov, and Watson, the AI that won on Jeopardy, to
Oh, yeah.
illustrate his point.
Yeah, those were incredible feats of computing power, but they don't mean human intelligence is over.
Right, they're impressive, but they're still just tools.
Exactly. They can't replace human creativity, intuition, and problem solving.
So instead of fearing AI, we should be looking for ways to use it to enhance our own abilities.
Yes. Focus on finding ways for computers to help us solve problems and achieve things we couldn't do on our own.
He even critiques all the hype around big data,
Wow.
saying we're too focused on the amount of data and not enough on what it means.
It's not just about collecting data, it's about using it to learn and make better decisions.
So the most valuable companies in the future won't be the ones trying to replace humans with computers, but the ones that find ways for computers to help humans. That's a much more optimistic outlook than you usually hear. So instead of worrying about the robot takeover, we should be focused on using technology to build a better future.
Right. Thiel says that the fear of robots taking over is distracting us from the real challenges we face. We should be focused on building a better world, using technology as a tool to achieve things we never thought possible.
That's a great message for our listeners. Don't be afraid of the future. Embrace the possibilities and find ways to use technology to make a positive impact.
Now let's take a look back at a time that offers some important lessons for today's entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
The clean tech bubble of the 2000s.
Okay.
Thiel analyzes why it burst and finds some key insights that are relevant for any startup, no matter what industry they're in.
That's a great example of learning from past mistakes.
Yeah.
So what were some of the key takeaways from the clean tech bubble?
Thiel identifies 7 key questions that he thinks are essential for evaluating any startup.
Okay.
He says that many clean tech companies failed because they didn't answer these questions properly.
All right, let's go through those questions. What's the first one?
The technology question. Is your technology a real breakthrough or just a small improvement?
Thiel argues that a lot of clean tech companies overestimated the impact of their technology, thinking that small improvements would be enough to disrupt the energy market. He compares this to the huge growth in computing power, which has driven companies like Intel.
Right. He uses the example of solar panel efficiency,
Right.
which has gotten better over time, but in a straight line, not exponentially.
Okay.
A lot of those clean tech companies missed that difference, which led them to overestimate their chances of success. They didn't have that 10x advantage we talked about before.
So the first lesson is be realistic about your technology's potential.
Yeah, don't get swept up in the hype.
What's the second question?
The timing question. Is now the right time to start your company?
That's a big one, especially in industries that are changing quickly. How do you know if it's too early or too late?
Thiel says that a lot of clean tech companies started at the wrong time. They thought government subsidies and all the excitement around green technologies would guarantee success.
Yeah.
But when the subsidies dried up and the hype faded, a lot of those companies were left high and dry.
He uses Tesla as an example, right? They really nailed the timing question.
Exactly. They secured a massive loan from the government in early 2010, right before the clean tech bubble burst and government support for those technologies disappeared.
So it's about understanding the market and making sure the timing is right.
Exactly. The third question is the monopoly question. Are you starting with a big chunk of a small market?
This ties back to his idea that monopolies can be good, right?
That does. He believes those clean tech companies often failed because they didn't focus on dominating a niche market. They tried to tackle the entire energy sector, which is huge and super competitive.
He uses Mia Soleil as an example, right? The solar panel company that claimed they were about to become the biggest producer in the world, but they ended up struggling.
Exactly. They spread themselves too thin and didn't really get a strong foothold anywhere.
Okay, the fourth question.
The people question. Do you have the right team?
Seems basic, but I bet there's more to it than just hiring smart people.
There is. Thiel says that a lot of clean tech companies were led by salesman executives
Okay.
who were great at raising money but didn't have the technical knowledge to actually create groundbreaking products. All talk, no action.
That reminds me of his story about Founders Fund making a rule to pass on any company whose founders dressed up for pitch meetings.
I love that story.
Yeah, they figured real tech people don't wear suits.
It's funny, but it makes a point.
Yeah,
To build a successful company, you need more than just charm and smooth talk.
right. You need a team with the skills and experience to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've gone through the technology question, the timing question, the monopoly question, and the people question. What's next?
The distribution question. Do you have a way to not just make your product, but actually get it to people?
This goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? The importance of distribution.
Exactly. Thiel says clean tech companies often messed up here. They focus too much on developing products
Right.
and just assumed customers would come running. But as we've talked about, distribution is often the hardest part of building a successful company.
He uses Better Place as an example, the electric vehicle startup that spent a ton of money on swappable batteries and charging stations, but only sold like 1,000 cars.
Right. They had a cool idea, but they couldn't get it to people.
What's the sixth question?
The durability question. Will your position in the market still be strong 10, 20 years from now?
So thinking long-term, planning for the future.
Exactly. Thiel believes those clean tech companies often underestimated this challenge. They didn't think about how quickly the competition could change.
Yeah.
They were so focused on the present that they didn't plan for the future.
And the final question.
The secret question: have you found a unique opportunity that others haven't?
This brings us back to the idea of secrets, right?
It does. It's about finding that hidden truth, that unique insight that gives you an edge.
Thiel says that a lot of those clean tech companies didn't find a real secret.
Yeah.
They were focused on ideas that everyone already knew about.
Right. They weren't offering anything truly unique.
He contrasts that with Tesla, which nailed all 7 of these questions.
They really did. They developed a truly innovative electric car, got government funding at the perfect time, focused on a specific market, built a strong team, figured out distribution, planned for the future, and found a unique opportunity.
Wow, that's quite a checklist. It sounds like they were really strategic in their approach.
They're a great example of a company that embraced that definite optimism and used it to succeed in a tough industry.
So even in a sector as important as energy, just being part of it isn't enough to build a great company.
Right. You need to find your niche, dominate a small market, and develop a truly innovative solution.
Now let's dive into one of the most interesting and maybe controversial ideas in the book, the founder's paradox.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
This is where Thiel gets into the minds of successful entrepreneurs, right?
Exactly. He says that successful founders often have a really unique mix of extreme traits.
Okay.
They're not your average person.
So what are some of these extreme traits? What makes founders different?
He tells the story of the PayPal founding team, highlighting their unusual backgrounds.
Yeah.
4 out of 6 of them built bombs in high school.
Wow.
5 were 23 or younger. 4 were born outside the U.S. 3 had escaped communist countries. And even the one who seemed like a typical privileged American kid turned down a great job offer at a big bank to join this, ragtag group.
What a mix of people. It sounds like they were brilliant, but definitely not conventional.
Exactly. And Thiel suggests this is common with successful founders.
Okay.
They don't fit the usual patterns. They're more likely to be at the extremes of different characteristics.
So they're not just smart and driven, there's something more.
He argues that these extreme traits are part of what makes them successful, but also part of what makes them controversial. They're often admired for their vision, but also criticized for their quirks and unusual behavior.
He uses examples like Richard Branson, Howard Hughes, even Bill Gates and Steve Jobs to make this point. Right?
He does. Branson, with his flamboyant personality and his risky ventures, he's a perfect example. Hughes, a genius engineer and aviator, struggled with mental illness. Gates, the tech visionary, faced a ton of scrutiny and legal battles. Jobs, the perfectionist, was known for being difficult to work with.
So there's often a downside to the founder's journey.
It's not all easy and glamorous.
So what's the lesson for our listener? Should they try to develop these extreme traits?
Thiel's not saying you need to become an eccentric recluse or a demanding perfectionist to be successful,
Right.
but he is encouraging you to embrace your individuality, your own strengths and weaknesses.
He thinks too many people try to fit in, suppressing their true selves to meet society's expectations.
But real innovation often comes from those who are different, who challenge the norm.
So embrace your inner outsider.
Exactly. Embrace your unique perspective, your willingness to question everything. Those might be the very things that help you build something amazing.
Now let's think about the far future. What does Thiel say about what's to come? He brings up philosopher Nick Bostrom, who outlines 4 possible scenarios for humanity.
Oh yeah, the 4 futures: recurrent collapse, plateau, extinction, and takeoff.
Wow, those are some big ideas. Can you explain what each of those scenarios would look like?
Recurrent collapse. That's the idea that history repeats itself. Civilizations rise and fall in a never-ending cycle.
Hmm.
The thought that we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.
And plateau, that's where progress slows down and things become pretty stable.
Yeah, like we hit a ceiling and can't go any further. Extinction? Well, that one's pretty self-explanatory. It's the scenario where humanity just ceases to exist.
And takeoff is the scenario where progress explodes, leading to a future that's so different from today we can hardly imagine it.
Exactly. It's the idea that we're about to experience